Breast hooks and deck beams. It's kind of slow going because this carpentry is rather complex. But what I'm doing is I'm starting to put in these deck beams up forward that will hold the foredeck. And the first thing you may notice here, if you know anything about this plan, is that I have these beams in here forward of the frames, and the plan actually calls for them to be behind the frames. So in other words, where I'm in front of the frame forward here, it should be back here. But I don't think it's going to matter because the deck just screws down on top of this, and the last one at frame number 7 here, I am coming behind it. And that's necessary because there's a bulkhead that goes in at frame 7 and creates a watertight compartment for the forward section of the boat. The breast hook, it calls for it to be made out of mahogany, which is what I've done, but I didn't have a piece that was big enough to get all the way back to the first frame, so I've pieced this together. This was exceptionally tricky to do because you've got the curve of the boat going down like this. You've got this angle here on the stem, and then you got to lay it on the shear clamp, which comes up to about here. It doesn't make it all the way to the stem. And one of the things I had to do was trim down the shear clamp to get this thing to lay flat. You can see over here, maybe you can, where I've really got that trimmed down quite a bit. And the same thing happened over here. Part of this is because the shear clamp wasn't quite down far enough on the frame to allow for this thickness of wood to sit here. The other thing that happened is I couldn't figure out how to get this thing to lay flat in here. And what I came to find out was that my planking isn't exactly straight. You can see here that on the left, which is actually starboard, is higher. Boy, it really looks bad on the video. In actuality, it's off maybe a quarter of an inch up here at the top. But the result of it is that you can see here that I'm coming down underneath this. So we're just going to trim this part off, and that should fix that. Now, how I fitted this, rather than wreck a nice expensive piece of mahogany right away by hacking away at it, I took some just regular plywood and I put it up here, and I cut out a triangle, and then I took these little thin pieces of wafer thin cedar and matched them up with the edges so that I could get an idea what my pattern should look like. And then once I had that and had all these little pieces taped on there, so now I know my edge was here and up to here for the stem, and similar over here. So then I got a piece of plywood like here and put this on there and got it to where I could get my edges lined up and then cut that out. Then the other thing I had to do was take my bevel gauge and figure out what the angle was coming down inside there so that I could cut the bevel on this template here. And I just kept monkeying with it, and I'd get the angle just about right, take it over to the circular saw and adjust the bevel angle on the table saw over there, and then made this template. And once I got the template to where I was about right on that, then I transferred it off to the mahogany. And even so, I wrecked a piece. It's over there behind the table saw where I didn't cut it right. So fortunately I had some more. This carpentry is pretty complex because you've got all these different angles. I'm working on frame 7 right now. Here's 6. And you can see you've got to cut an angle down like this to match up with the side of the boat. And then this has got to come back over even with the shear line, the top of the side there. The other thing is that these have got an arch to them. You'll remember that we used the deck mold to determine the angles on the shear clamp, and then the rest of the story is that you have to create this hump in your deck beams to create a crown. And so I've been taking this mold, and I actually got that from John Hutchison when he gave me the frames or the molds, and then clamping it on my piece of oak, and then clamping it on the piece of oak, and then drawing my lines, and then cutting it out. And you can see here, this one's just pretty much right on there. So this is my deck beam for frame 7, and the plans call for 5/8 width by 1 1/4. So like this beam here on number 6 is 5/8 wide and 1 1/4 deep. And I guess that's why they want to use white oak, because that doesn't seem like very much for holding a deck up. If somebody wants to walk up on the front deck, that just doesn't seem like very much to hold you. So actually, I beefed up number 6. Number 5 is 5/8. This one's actually 3/4. And so is this one here for number 7. And so, because there's a bulkhead in here, I went ahead and I notched out 1/8 of an inch off of here to get this edge in front of the frame back to 5/8 as the plan calls for. So I beefed it up, but at the same time, I have the same 5/8 face amount in front of the frame. And this is the one that is in front of the frame, so I feel good about that. Now, you might be able to see it's still sticking up just a little bit over the shear line. I trimmed some off of the inside of here, and then I took the chisel and very carefully, and that's probably 1/8 of an inch deep, and I may have to take just a little bit more out of there. On the other side here, same thing. So see, I've got this notch in here that's to face up with the frame. This is notched out of the shear clamp, and then took this notch out of here. Now this is way more than 1 1/4 inches, but you got to have a pretty thick piece for this one on frame 7, because the mast hoop, I can't remember what they call it, but the hardware that the mast goes through mounts on this board. So I want a pretty healthy piece. Plus, this carpentry has just been fun. I've got that right in there. And on this side, we're just right there. It's just off just a hair. In fact, I may just be able to take a plane or a sander and take that down. And I don't think that's going to monkey with the crown of that much. I think I'm going to take off just a little bit more on the other side. But I don't know if it's very obvious, but I think you can see that crown on the deck is coming out very nicely. I believe that's going to make a nice surface for the deck to lay on. All right, that's it for tonight.